Evening.
Good to be here.
We are. We will now introduce our new course on Oswald Spengler's The Decline of the West, or rather the going down of the land of the evening, der Untergang des Abendlandes. I begin with a quote from, I'll butcher probably when I try to translate it from Spengler, which in German reads, Dichten und Geschichtsschreiben sind verwandt, Rechnen und Erkennen sind es auch. Poetizing and writing history are related, so are calculating and knowing or finding cognition. Okay, so in exactly 1 month, on the 7th of October, which is a Saturday, the live seminars begin for this course. Sebastian, who has a PhD in philosophy, you teach philosophy, you're assistant professor in Stuttgart. He's also written, for example, this book here on Hegel, the world philosopher. Another one which is down here that I can't reach towards now, which is an ethics of video games. But now here we turn towards gloomier things, namely the impending decline of this our fine land of the evening.
Well, it all depends, Johannes, if it's really that gloomy. It's certainly portrayed that way, but it has also some kind of like really uplifting energy to it, the whole book. So it's really more layered and nuanced than usually portrayed. So sometimes you really get a rush out of reading.
Okay, so enlighten us then. How is he not Dr. Gloom?
Well, I hope my mic is working better now.
No, it's still,
not.
I would just use the other one. Better.
All right, we'll see.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so if this will do.
This has now, the sound of the new microphone has the charm of a recording from 20 years ago. So go on.
All right. That's kind of unfortunate, but okay. So why is Spengler not, how do you call him, Dr. Doom? Well, he is kind of diagnosing a certain downfall, obviously, or decline, but he advises us not to get all too sad or how would you call it, like all too like yeah, just like in a pathetic kind of way sad. So it's rather a mood of like, it can also be a grandiose mood of just like witnessing this fulfillment of a culture, because for him decline is combined with, is always just like the another aspect of fulfillment, and fulfillment means, well, coming to an end, and this coming to an end means decline as well, but it's so it's more complex than just, well, everything's going to hell. Yes, everything's going to hell, but something really great is going to hell, and there's a greatness in this decline as well. And so we shouldn't have like a false pity on ourselves. Probably we should rather develop a realistic outlook on the times we live in. So that's more, I think, the Spenglerian attitudes towards our situation.
To ensure that there can be a good death of this culture as it morphs into a civilization, and not just a gentle disappearance into the night. Do not go gently into that good night.
Well, exactly that. And I think even beyond Spengler, or so starting with this attitude that is somehow implicit in one can, go beyond him. Now I have connection issues. This is terrible.
No, it's
fine.
You there? Go on. Yeah, go on.
All right. So one can go beyond Spengler by, becoming open, by becoming open towards the possibilities, the real possibilities of a new future, a new culture that might emerge for us. But one can only be really open for this kind of future when one is realistic about the times we live in. So this is what I would have to say about pessimism.
Well, Spengler says somewhere that optimism is cowardice. I forgot where. I don't think it's in The Decline of the West, but
no, I don't think so either. Yeah.
So help us so if anyone has any questions for Sebastian on the course or on Spengler in general, we'll be here another 30 minutes or so. I'll mention something about the course briefly in a second, but first, maybe could you give us an overview over what people will learn at the course? Obviously, the book is very long, so we won't be reading everything, but we'll be reading the most important sections of the book.
Yeah, that's right. So, well, obviously, you can always argue what are the most important sections of the book. So, what I have here is what I take to be really very important parts of the book. Let's put it that way. But what I want to say right away is that obviously it's in the course we are, thinking and philosophizing together. So I'm obviously open, or we will be all open for making any changes. If a certain topic really shows itself to be so important that we should spend more time on it, then we will obviously do that. So the nice thing about Halcyon Academy is that we don't have any credit points we have to earn or any other restrictions. So we're really free to follow where our thinking leads us. So,
by the way,
curriculum,
what the European university used to be until the Bologna process, just to mention this, which was only 25 years ago.
Exactly. So it's back. Story. Exactly. So we're revitalizing the good old days at Halcyon, and but the curriculum as it stands now, we'll start with really two whole sessions on the introduction. Why is that? Because the introduction is really a lengthy introduction. It's more than 60, almost 70 pages, and it has a lot of ideas packed into it. So many ideas, in fact, that I think we won't be able to go through all of them in one session in just 90 minutes. That would be, just scratching the surface. And what I want to do with this course is, not to have like just a brief summary of things, but to really have people look into the depth of Spengler's thoughts. So that's why I thought it would be good to have two sessions on that lengthy introduction. I will also have one video lecture for the entire introduction, which is already online at the course. So whoever enrolls in the course can start watching that video lecture right away, and also, preparing comments and questions and whatever for it. And then in the third session, we'll be talking about the meaning of numbers, which is really the next chapter in the book as well. And first, I was thinking about not having this chapter because I was like, mathematics, is that probably too complicated? Can we really do it? But then I read it again, and I was absolutely sure we must talk about mathematics, because what Spengler tells us in this chapter is really, it shows how radical a thinker he is. Typically, when you hear people talk about mathematics, it's, math. Obviously, there's one math, and math is not only objective but absolute, and people laugh at the idea that there could be different notions of mathematics. But this is actually what Spengler is claiming. So he's telling us there is not one mathematics. There are as many mathematics and notions of number as there are cultures. And not only that, mathematics and its notion of number informs so many different fields of culture as well, including the arts. So we'll talk about the relationship between different notions of number and sculpture and music and even politics. And this is really a fascinating chapter which shows how radical Spengler is, and
Yeah.
especially what I find so interesting, that he, as a conservative thinker, you could call him, or someone who is associated with the right, presents ideas that today are typically associated with the loony left deconstructive movement. So, for example, a radical critique of Eurocentrism, and this
Yeah.
is, or absolute, certain kinds of absolutism, and this is really very interestingly presented in Spengler. Obviously, with the difference that it's not, that it's well, really not a loony idea with him, but presented with a really philosophical rigor. So that I find really amazing, because you see that Spengler is a kind of thinker that, just doesn't fit in your typical kind of categories. So that's why we'll talk about this chapter on numbers in the third session. So I'll just go on
Yeah.
describing what
Just,
we have there. Then we have,
briefly, maybe change your microphone again. For anyone interested, just very briefly, the Greek mathematical thought and the origin of algebra by Jacob Klein is a helpful book for anyone interested in mathematics in ancient Greece, and as it developed when algebra made it to Europe. Okay, sorry, let's go on.
That's very interesting. So yeah, because for example, the Arabian mathematics, which for Spengler expresses the Magian soul, is, as he tells us, well, really not really understood to this point. So that's very interesting that you have some sources on that too, Johannes. I hope the microphone is doing better now again.
Yeah.
I apologize to our listeners and viewers for that. So then we have again two sessions on the problem of world history. The first one, which is called physiognomic and systematic. And I'm not sure if in English the translation would have been better, physiognomics and systematics, but that will be also a reoccurring topic in our course. The problems of language, of philosophical language, of having a good translation of Spengler, which is really difficult. And but having to switch between German and English will actually help us, I think, to enrich our understanding of Spengler. So even that's true. I think even true for those who speak and read German, because facing the English translation makes you reflect on the German original even more. Anyway, so we'll talk about physiognomic and systematic. So that's two ways of thinking actually about or perceiving the world for Spengler. And you already mentioned it, I think, with your quote in the beginning when you contrasted poetics and history on the one hand with, I think, calculation and understanding on the other hand. And this is really it. So physiognomics is, what is physiognomics? It's the outer expression, manifestation of your inward state of soul. That's physiognomics. So you look at someone and you don't see pure matter or anything like that, but you see into someone's soul, And so this is the kind of history or understanding of history that Spengler is after, and not a systematic understanding of history, which would be a calculating, just factual enumeration of facts or things that happens. He calls that ant work, and this is pretty much, I think, what most historians are forced to do nowadays, or even back in the day, ant work. And he's not interested really in that. So we'll get a notion about, we'll get an understanding of this notion in that session. And then very important, yes?
Even historians are data scientists now. That's all. That's it.
And for Spengler saw that already and said, well, this is really not a historical view of history. This is if you will, a technical or systematic view of history, which does not grasp the actual depth of history, because, well, what history is the manifestation of a culture's soul for Spengler, and we have to somehow penetrate the depth of the soul, of the cultural soul, to understand history. So and then we have the next session on November 5th then, and then we'll talk about the idea of destiny and the principle of causality. Well, this is just a really wonderful distinction between destiny and causality, which again is correlated with what we're just talking about now. Maybe the idea of causality is usually the one we use when we look at history, or the one that historians use. What caused this or that thing to happen? But again, for Spengler, this is not understanding the actual interconnectedness and level of depth at which things are interconnected, because it doesn't see, if you want, the soul, the cultural soul that is behind, the cultural forms that are behind the things that are happening. And Spengler's name for, if you will, the force of history, which manifests itself in living cultures and cultural cycles and life cycles of cultures, this force he calls destiny. So we'll talk about destiny as well. And maybe this is a point where I have to add something which you and I were talking about before the show, namely that we probably will have to talk about or have an extra session or some kind of discussion of Spengler's distinction between the Apollonian, the Faustian, and the Magian soul, which is, I think, just very prominently associated with his works. I'm not quite sure yet how we will, in what way we will integrate it into the course, but this is a distinction that will be present all through anyway, and maybe we'll have an extra session on that. So maybe there will be some smaller changes to the curriculum before the course starts in order to integrate that, and to understand our own culture. Obviously, the Faustian soul is the most important.
How would you briefly summarize the Faustian soul?
Well, I think one way to really to get a grasp on it is just by looking at the character of Faust, which is obviously Goethe's Faust in the drama with the tragedy with the same title, two-part tragedy. And what Faust does there is or what characterizes Faust is this I could put it, this longing for infinity, maybe, of boundlessness, of never being satisfied with what you have in front of you, with penetrating every border and distinction that comes before you, and even be willing to sell your soul to the devil in order to satisfy this longing. I think this is quite a nice characteristic of the Faustian soul. But yes, it's a very, very rich notion, one that is not Spengler does not define it in like a sentence. Actually, and this is a philosophical point he makes, all the basic distinctions of his philosophy, they can be explained to a certain extent, they can be illustrated, but they cannot be defined in a classical sense. Why? Because they're so fundamental that they actually inform everything that can be defined. So we're really dealing with categories of a certain type that we can grasp intuitively through certain pictures, probably, but we cannot just like mechanically define them. So this is why Spengler's work is incompatible with AI generated kinds of you know, texts and understandings and so on.
AI will go the way of Bitcoin. So you know, it's one of those hypes. And let me just interject now briefly. It's one thing that comes to mind when I read the book is that he points out that even from the very beginning, the Faustian soul strives towards heavens. I think he makes, or to the infinite. He makes he compares Gothic cathedrals with space rockets, or rockets. So the potential with the idea of the rocket that was at least already floating around in his time. He points to Rembrandt's, mostly his self-portraits, or in general portraits by Rembrandt, and the brownish background, which he also sees as this longing for the infinite. I'll just say this briefly before you continue. If anyone has any questions on the course specifically or on Spengler specifically, let us know now in the chat and we'll get to it in the end. Let me also point out that enrollment is now open. The link to enroll is in the chat and it's also in the description of this video. If you see this after the live stream, just follow the link and enroll. We begin on the 7th of October, which is a Saturday. We always meet from 6 to 8 p.m. UK time. Let me just show you the enrollment page, which is here. So that if you click on enrollment, that's where it takes you. And once you enroll, you get access to, let me show you this perhaps also. This is what it looks like on the inside. Here he is. This is the first video. This is the second video here. On the meaning of numbers, transcripts are to follow, etc. And the different tiers that you can choose from if you want to enroll, there are 3. You can either, if you don't have time for the seminars, we're meeting 10 times in total, then you can just enroll in the first tier, which is the self-study tier. Gives you access to 7 lectures, 45 minutes each, the audio files and PDFs that you can read in the reader of the transcripts wherever there are lectures, also the recordings of the seminars. Or if you have time and you want to read the book together with others, I think if you can make at least 5 sessions, then that's good for you. So you read this in a group and you can ask Sebastian questions. We'll have time for breakout sessions, so there will be small group work, etc. There will be a group and course forum as well. So we meet for 2 hours every week. And in the final seminar, you actually can present your own talk or short story or whatever you've written, maybe a poem, etc. So that's for you. Or if you're working on, I don't know, let's say a book or a longer paper, or you're writing a blog, maybe you have a Substack, etc. And that concerns itself also with, for example, Goethe, Nietzsche, Hegelian understanding of history. This was, of course, one of the strong suits of Sebastian. Then that, of course, you know, or just more specifically, just on Spengler, then you can book private one-on-one sessions with Sebastian as well throughout the course. Susan is here. Hello, Susan. Hello, Dali. Hello, Dawson. So I hope Dawson will enroll. He hasn't yet, but he has to. So So I'll leave it at that for now. I'll mention this again in a bit. If you have questions for any for Sebastian on the course, etc., just let us know now. We'll get to it in the end. Sebastian, back to you.
All right. Yes. So what I want to just stress or add to what you just said is that yes, then we'll definitely, you know, always have like this like breakout sessions for discussion, and we'll try to like have everyone contribute, wants to contribute to the course, because well, you know, if we wanted just a video lecture, we could just do the video lectures, but we want to actually like come together to read, understand, and think together. And it's always different to do that in a group and together than just doing it on your own. So I'm really looking forward to that. All right, so back
Maybe it's just me, but I don't hear you anymore. Sebastian, hello. We don't have. You need to turn off your. You need to change your microphone. Just change it to the MacBook microphone and don't change it back. Don't change it back. We can't hear you. There's no audio. Okay, I'm sure he will be coming back soon. In the meantime, if you have questions, put them in the. I hope I'm not muted. It might be because of the software.
All right, so I think I'm back.
Yeah, go on. Okay,
right.
go on.
Can you hear me?
Go on. Yes, go on.
All right. Okay. I'm very sorry. Couldn't hear or see anything anymore. So yeah. So in the second part of the course, we'll start talking about topics that are topics of the second book, Spengler's second book. And in the second book, he describes things that are important to understand our own times. And I think I left off at saying that our own times are called a civilization by Spengler, and that civilization has a very specific meaning for him. I mean, civilization means the end phase of a culture's fulfillment. It's coming to an end, and also, well, then it's decline. So if we want, and this is the time we're living in, according to Spengler, and and we'll ask ourselves, of course, if Spengler's descriptions are fitting our own times. But I think say right away that I believe that many of his descriptions, at least, are really unbelievably fitting our own times, and we'll try to look at some of these topics in the second part of our course. For example, the difference between city dwellers and people of the land, so people living in rural areas, which is one very important distinction for Spengler, one which is very important today, I think. Asking ourselves also, what about a potential revival of the city? You know, is that at least is that realistic at all from a Spenglerian point of view? And we'll talk about things like money and politics, especially the connection between money, politics, and also the press, which Spengler analyzed in an absolutely fantastic manner. So it's really, it has lost none of its force.
It's actually it's maybe becoming more significant,
more significant, more valid, really. So yeah, you could say, well, he didn't know anything about social media, so how how valid could it still be today? But it's, so if you will see when you come join the course, you will see that it's so on point to understanding the connection between democratic politics, or politics and democracies, media power, and money. And this is just really a lucid analysis, and it's also fearless and
maybe that's one of the reasons why he's not read.
Yes, I believe so. So what you usually get with really I'm sorry to say it that way, but really like stupid people, stupid in the sense of like living in their own presupposed notions, and not willing to question them.
Well,
So
that's what the Greeks called an idiot, an idiotes,
ex-
an idiot.
exactly. So idiots in the Greek sense, and also idiots in academia, they have this preconceived notion of Spengler somehow being, bad or dangerous because he's associated with, well, not liberalism, but a certain reactionary movement and critique also of the Weimar Republic. Even though Spengler clearly was not a national socialist, but that distinction doesn't matter at all. Then it's just, well, he's a conservative thinker, put it that way, and being a conservative thinker who really sees the problems with let's say the prevailing state of mind today, well, he will not be liked by those who are, well, doing really great under these circumstances. And this is most of mainstream academia. So I think it's not that surprising that he's rather shunned by polite academic society. But if you really talk to people who have a strong opinion on Spengler, usually they haven't read him. And if you talk to people who really have read him, they will respect him, love his work, benefit greatly from it, even when they disagree. So just to be clear, we're not starting like a Spengler fan club. This is not the goal. We want to be critical of Spengler as well. But we want to approach him in the same way we should approach. Which we should approach every text.
You're now banned from teaching the course because I thought we're starting a Spengler fanboy club.
Too bad. Well, okay. No, but we'll approach him the same way we would approach any philosophical text, any text of like any classical philosophical text, named with a maximal, charity and wanting to understand it and like really diving into that world of thinking, and not looking at it from the outside with their own stupid little standards and then judging it. For that's not philosophy. So that's what we're not going to do.
So we have a couple of questions. If there are more, let us know now, because we're about to disappear into the good night. We're not polite, we are gentle. So we'll be disappearing gentle into the good night. Anyway, so here's Michael. How in which other? Michael has done the 2 Hegel courses over the past year and also Heidegger.
Nice.
So he would come prepared. So Michael, Sebastian is a proper Hegelian. You'd be in good company. But how and which other primary authors might be referenced in the course? Well, I can tell you right now, Nietzsche and Goethe, but Sebastian maybe knows more.
So a lot of Goethe. We'll talk a lot about Goethe. So I read a lot about Goethe preparing for the course, a lot which I had, only like heard about in passing. For example, his botanical works, where he develops the idea of the idea of morphology as such, which then Spengler takes and uses for his philosophy of history. So we'll talk about Goethe a lot, about his philosophical works, about his poetry. Which, by the way, are really interconnected, because the Goethean idea is that poetry is actually the best way to do morphology. It's the best way to understand the living, the organic. Why? Because poetic language has the same living and organic quality to it, so it can mirror its object in a sense that, like, the understanding, classifying, analyzing way of looking at things kills the living thing it tries to understand. So we'll talk about Goethe a lot. We'll talk about Nietzsche,
which is a lot. So AI wants to kill too. Right? When they say, "Will AI take out humanity?" You have to be careful. These are all. It's a bit. Well, it won't destroy human beings as physical beings, but our humanity, it might very well take down with it into the toilet bowl that it creates. Anyways, well, that's sewage of nonsense. Okay, what did you want to
So Nietzsche,
continue on the question? Yeah.
yeah, Nietzsche and Goethe, and I think we'll definitely talk a lot about Hegel. I've worked a lot on Hegel. I've written 2 books on Hegel, and but so I would not consider myself a Hegelian anymore. Probably Hegel scholar and someone who really
That's his book.
respects Hegel. Thanks for promotion, Johannes. But we'll talk about Hegel, and in the 2 video lectures that I already recorded, I do talk about Hegel, obviously because his philosophy of history is really important as a backdrop, even if it's a negative backdrop for understanding Spengler. We'll also talk about Leibniz, or at least his reference, I think, is prominently referenced throughout the book, because Spengler makes this really amazing claim where he says, well, Leibniz is actually, well, next to Nietzsche and Goethe, the most important one. And so he sees a really deep connection between Leibniz and Goethe. This has to do with Leibniz's monadology and Leibniz's understanding of, well, monads are living entities, you must see. So and there you see that in Leibnizian metaphysics, the notion of living or being alive is really fundamental, and I think this is the connection that Spengler sees. So these will be very obvious names that will be dropped. I think we will not get around talking about Heidegger as well, which I do not say just to humor Johannes, but when we will talk about techniques and the machine and notions like these in Spengler, I think we will have to talk about Heidegger und die Technik as well, und das Gestell. And I don't know how Gestell is usually translated into English.
Okay. And framing, usually.
Yeah.
It's usually in framing. Why does Spengler think that Western capitalist democracy will become autocracies before their demise?
Well,
asks the philosophical wanderer.
I'm not sure if Spengler would actually subscribe to that analysis. Probably would say that capitalist democracies are the demise. So or are yes. So well, at least in their late stage. So that this is how radical Spengler is. So for him, a certain sense of autocracy is, if you will, like Caesarean reaction to certain phenomena of disorder.
Well, to the rule, against the rule of money.
That's it.
So
that's it.
The idea is that democracy is ultimately the rule of money, not capital, right? Yeah. Not the means of production, but money, yeah. Finance, financialization, derivatives, etc. Whatever is mobile and can float around the world, and this, of course, now at the speed of light. And democracy is the Staatsform, is the form of government that's preferable to money, to Geld, das Geld. So here we have with Spengler, one of the very few philosophers, I would consider him a philosopher, who actually considers money. It's very striking that economists, or economics in general, does not really consider money. Money does not factor into their models. There's almost nothing written on money. Same is true for Marx.
So yeah, so and since money is, if you like, not only volatile but volatility itself in a certain sense.
Yeah,
it's also the
pure force.
Exactly, it's equal to the dissolution of tradition, order, and so on. And so for this, he sees autocracy, a certain kind of autocracy, as a possible reaction, at least. Marx needs money. Well, we all do, unfortunately, but even Marx.
Susan asks, who's also done all of our Hegel courses and Heidegger and philosophy of the machine, where I think,
Wow.
if I remember correctly, I don't know, I think, but you were in spiritual cybernetics in any event. Does Spengler see the future in terms of advances in technology towards such as something like smart cities? For anyone who doesn't know, smart city is the idea, also named 15-minute city, where under total surveillance and full digitization, you have everything that you need, any kinds of service, etc., within 15 minutes of walking distance. The city, it's very smart, which at least in Britain actually just means being dressed well. So I don't really know what smart here is. The city dressed well? I don't know. But anyways, it's smart in the sense that that city will be extremely good at surveilling its citizens, their every footstep, and any purchase that they make, perhaps even to the point where you don't even need money, because you are walking money. The minute you walk into, as we now have in Britain, by the way, around London, we have smart shop supermarkets where you just walk in and you walk out again. So that is part of what the smart city is. It is basically just surveillance. It's usually sugar-coated on the greenery and sustainability, etc. But anyways.
Yeah, so I think this is a really interesting question, but I haven't really thought about it. But my first reaction would be that Spengler would not be surprised, or from a Spenglerian point of view, we should not be surprised that this is one of the consequences of this late phase of civilization. So at least it fits very well his general understanding of civilization, of well, if you will, like a the calculation of all being, if you will,
Yeah.
and this is exactly what Johannes is described right now about the smart cities.
So, ironically, on the point of money, you should send us yours by
But not
enrolling
just
in the
like
course.
that. That's it.
No. So here's the thing. If you want to support the work that we do, I am fully self-employed and going solo. And so I've been building this online academy now for the past 4 years. I'm very glad that I found Sebastian last year. He taught a course on Hegel in German earlier this year, based on his book, Hegel, the World Philosopher, which if you read German, I would recommend. It's a great introduction, and also actually more than an introduction to Hegel. And there's another question we'll get to in a second. But so if you have time for the seminars, join us. October 7th, a Saturday, always 6 to 8 p.m. UK time, which is 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've just opened enrollment. We have 32 seats left for now. So we meet 10 times. Sebastian leads the seminars. You get access to the course from, you get so-called what they call lifetime access to all course materials. And there will be 7 video lectures. They're about 45 minutes long each. Some of them now already longer anyways, lifetime access, etc. Or if you don't have time for the seminars, just want to do this on your own time, just choose the self-study tier. If you have a project, if you're working on something, or you just want to spend even more time with Sebastian and discuss the state of our civilization with him, then perhaps this is for you, where you get, in addition to the group seminars, private tutorials with Sebastian and help us keep the lights on, which shine so bright. So just one final question, which is a good one to end on too. Did Spengler have any speculations as to what would happen after the collapse of the West?
Well, He did have the idea of a, and we already talked about that. That now at the end phase we'll have some sort of Caesarean reaction to the state of things. But if you really consider the bigger picture, I think for Spengler it is clear that our culture will end and must end, like any culture has ended. And believing that our culture can go on forever is just as ludicrous as believing that any individual can go on living forever. So, and what will come next then is, well, a new culture. And since Spengler is a very interesting kind of relativist, he would probably say, well, we don't know, we cannot predict the soul, the genuine individual soul that will come into being. Then we can only say something. We're in a special situation insofar as we can say something about, we have really good sense as Westerners of history, of historicity, if you will, and we can say something about the life cycles cultures in general have to go through, and we can approximate other cultures intuitively if we have a certain sense for it. But Spengler certainly is not some kind of prophet in the sense that he well, would be willing to describe, the future as such. The future, in a certain sense, even for Spengler, is open, and that does not conflict with his determinism in another sense.
Excellent. Thank you very much. The link to enroll is in the description and also in the live chat. So we see you all, he said, hopefully in exactly 4 weeks.
4
10
weeks,
Saturdays.
Amazing 10 Saturdays. It's going to be really intense. I promise it's going to blow your mind, not necessarily because of me, but because of Spengler. And yeah, come join us.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Sebastian, for your time.
Thanks, Johannes.
And see you all very soon. Good night.
See you soon.
And
Bye.
we shall not go gentle into that good night.